Hi everyone and welcome back to Construction Perspective. My name is Larato Momokha and I'm going to be your host, but you can call me Construction Bay. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will be talking about a very critical issue that is often overlooked. We'll be looking at TVET colleges, but speaking on the spatial arrangements and how they are located across South Africa. We note that the United Nations has said that 1 out of 5 children drop out of school and 2 out of 5 kids have never been inside a classroom. And we're speaking out of numbers up to 59 million. We also note that in South Africa, we are faced with a scourge of unemployment. We're faced with the scourge of unskilled youth. We are faced with the scourge of unemployability. And we can try and diagnose that the problem probably starts from basic education level. However, while we are at it, we understand that government has had different initiatives towards skills development. We have government that has had built. We have 50 TVET colleges across South Africa. We have SETAs that do programs that look into uplifting and skilling young people. But today we'll be speaking on, we'll be specifically looking at the spatial arrangement that would seek to address the issue of access, the issue of capacity, and why these TVETs are located in areas in which they are. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by our lovely guest speaker here, who's a close friend of mine, Zandile Ntlokwana, who is an accountant by profession, a CEO and founder, and she's launching one of her other big projects next week. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
She's also an operations manager at SciBeep. Zandile, before we get into the gist of things, if you could take us through the work that you do in the skills development space.
All right. Hi, everyone. And thank you for hosting me today. It's an honor to be on this channel. I'm one of the first subscribers of the channel, in fact, so I'm a huge fan. So Zandile Ntlokwana is really, I think we've trickled down on the bio, and we've just kept it simple, and we've said we're now just a pioneer of social transformation. And really what that means is that through the work that I've done, a lot of it in the center of it all is to try and transform society. And now skills development becomes then a critical component of the work that I do. I happen to be a managing director of a company called Zandile Holdings. And when we started off, we were in the built environment and we were in the construction space in particular. But as the years have gone, we've struggled to find our niche. And whilst understanding that there is definitely an appreciation for infrastructure development and the work of the built environment, we struggled with what is our space in this industry and what are we trying to do that is going to impact society at large. And we really then zoomed into social facilitation, and really how that came about was quite interesting. That a friend of a friend that Lerato introduced me to once just texted and said, we're looking for a social facilitator. And I was like, what is this? And when I looked at the scope of work, I then understood that it's in line with some of the work that we do. So in addition to Zandile Holdings, I have an NPO that is Headstrong Foundation. And really the work that we do there is to scale with a keen focus in the built environment. So we do artisan skills, so you're building, you're plastering, you're welding, you're really underestimated skills, but that we have found are quite necessary and perhaps something the South African people have taken for granted to be qualified in. So those are the skills we have focused on. We have broadened the scope because we've also picked up that there is a skills issue in South Africa. So we've not only focused on the built environment, but that was our keen starting point. And yeah, so that's who Zandile is. And then I am the operations manager of an organization called the South African Institution of Black Property Practitioners. And really the constituency and membership base of that organization is people in the property development space, your asset managers, your facilities managers, your real estate brokers, and professionals in the space. So the entire pipeline of the property industry is really where we're at. But in perhaps the simplest way of introducing Zandile is to say she's a pioneer of social transformation, because that's what the work we do in fact does, or at least we hope it does.
Oh, thank you so much for that brief. I think sometimes when you've done so much work, when you're project driven versus position driven, it also becomes difficult to say I'm this one thing. You find yourself doing the same thing in different spaces, and you end up being confused with
what is it that I actually do?
But you've done quite great, especially in the skills development space. I followed your work, especially for young people in the townships. But now getting into why we are here today, we're looking at the the Sustainable Development Goal, which is number 4, which speaks to quality education. And the SDG speaks to the aspect of TVETs being one of the aims in dealing with inequality and also gender disparities wealth disparities that exist. And I'm thinking that comes from understanding that having a skill allows or makes it easier for a person to have access to opportunities and also access to then economic participation. But in South Africa, we're looking at 60% skills development issue. We're looking at an annual increase of 72%, almost 72% in unemployment yearly. But these challenges are more prevalent in your peri-urban areas and also your rural areas. Do you think looking at TVETs, they can become a tool that then assists in terms of reaching the aim of empowering young people, women in general, in these communities?
So definitely, and I think there's definitely an underappreciation of, one, the location of TVETs, but two, the work that the TVETs are supposed to do. So when we speak transformation and we speak skills gap, and we speak how do we ensure that communities are creating sustainable young people, or people who are then viable in the economy, there is definitely an underappreciation for TVETs. And I think it's primarily because even just the working model of TVETs has not considered the local framework. So your IDPs are not speaking to the skills that area requires, for example. TVETs are perfectly located in your townships. And the TVET concept is such that you get theoretical learning, but a big bulk of the work you are being exposed to is practical. And that's something we do not get in a university setup. And that's the biggest challenge we are finding now as we interact with university graduates vis-a-vis TVET graduates. So there's definitely an underappreciation of what the work that a TVET can do. But I also think primarily at the core of the issue is the fact that we do not take the IDPs seriously, and we do not align the skills that we are training people on in our TVETs to the overall issues that pertain in our communities and the work that we are trying to do. I mean, we have a national development plan, and I don't think the skills that the TVETs are putting out are somewhat connected to those things. So I think there definitely is an underappreciation of what the TVET can do above and beyond just its location. And maybe just an interesting stat, in South Africa, a TVET is a choice, right? Where you either go to a TVET, you either go to private college, or you either go to university. In Kenya, you only go to TVET if you haven't been able to make it to university. So even the culture and the mindset around TVET in South Africa is such that it should be optional, right? So it's a choice driven. It's not that you have failed. And maybe that mindset also needs to change. And then TVET itself can be legislated in such a way that the curriculum itself services the communities that they exist in.
Okay, now I see you going into
a lot. Sorry.
I'm trying to wrap my head around what you just said, which is the what we call the greatest challenge that we've essentially seen is, or the biggest complaint in the labor market space, is that apparently what we're doing in school, or skills that are mostly produced, do not match what is needed in the industry. And I think you've spoken to that. And I think, again, there's always been a question of a national identity, right? And I think you spoke to a bit of that, saying that when you speak of IDPs, I know I'm pushing and I'm being very philosophical about it, but when you speak of IDPs not speaking to what TVETs can do and not creating opportunities for people who are going into TVETs, underappreciating what comes out of schools that are essentially that are there, located exactly there. But we still find ourselves in a very big problem. We're faced with a big challenge, and it's the issue of skill scarcity, even with the existence of this. And I think I wrote a paper some years ago, and it was on the issue that money is being put out for different initiatives, TVETs, CETAs. There was Zandile, there's the National Youth Service, Revitalized National Youth Service, there's the YES program. There's quite a number of programs that are being put in, and still today we're faced with the issue of skill scarcity. How do we position TVET to be the solution to that? Because we know that artisanal skills are the backbone of any economy. So how do we position TVET? How do we make a call to government, private sector, communities, to say that you need to prioritize TVETs? Either you build more TVETs, or you create more campuses that will offer skills that are scarce. Because I know in South Africa, within the built environment, we've got civil engineering. We don't have enough civil engineers. Mechanical engineers, we don't have enough electrical engineers. Those are scarce, right? Meaning that, and it goes both ways, both as a professional or as a technician, also as an artisan. How do we push government to say that invest in this? And what's also worse, adding on to this problem, is the fact that we also do not have enough teachers to teach. And I don't want to leave it behind, to teach these particular programs. We don't have enough STEM educators or trainers. We don't have. So how do we push government to actually prioritize, invest more, because they've already invested, but to invest right, so that we get the required results, or the much needed result for South Africa to thrive?
Sure. And I think this is probably an attraction issue. And I want to take it home first. You grow up in a family that believes that the best kind of education is if you are at a Wits, you're at a University of Pretoria or University of Johannesburg. And as a young person growing up in a household that epitomizes being in that institution, you then grow up with the mentality that a TVET is not an attractive institution to be in. So the general constituency and the demographic that a TVET attracts are people who feel generally that because I didn't make it for university, this is what I will settle in. And I think it's that mindset that we go into these institutions with that doesn't allow us to interrogate how great the work of this institution can be. I mean, for me as well, if you told me after high school I must go to a college or a TVET in the community, it would have been mind-boggling. And it's because of the attraction and the design of a TVET that is not speaking to young people to make it attractive. And I wish to some degree we would have the Afrikaner mindset, right? That would say it's better to be skilled on the job in your place of study, so that when you go out, you already have the experience. So there is definitely a detachment and a respect. There's an attached respect to universities that are more formalized, like the big universities, and not so much an attraction on TVETs. And I think whilst there is no attraction, or people do not see it as attractive, then people don't feel the need to participate in policies that drive transformation or speak to progress in those institutions. So I think first and foremost, it would be creating a culture of a TVET being perhaps the first option of a school leaver. So for someone in grade 10, for someone in grade 12, the first point of contact would be, let us promote TVETs as institutions that can drive transformation, that can drive job creation. Because in fact, the 70% practical, 30% theory is what we need in the country right now.
Now, speaking to the issue of school leavers before they can matriculate, I know in South Africa, only 40% out of if I did my grade 1 in 2004 and I'm going to matriculate in 2013, only 40% of the people that I enrolled with in grade 1 will actually get to write matric, and with that, the 60% that falls out throughout the years is untraceable.
Sure.
But I also want to appreciate that I don't want to overlook the fact that the issue of dropouts in general is multi-layered. It's not as simple as you put it, right? There's single-headed households, children-headed households. There's issues of access to sanitary towels. There's issues of poverty that actually influence all of there's quite a great number of societal limitations that do not allow children to finish school. Now, we say to a rural child, a rural student, that maybe they can go to a TVET, right? If they can go up until grade 9, they get the grade 9 report and they can go and apply at a TVET to do NCV, I think. Mm-hmm. But they aren't TVETs in rural areas.
Sure.
TVETs are only located in townships, right? And I know for a fact a lot of people that I went to school with when I was still in my Fikeng have made a TVET, what do they call it? A choice to go to, not because I couldn't go to university. I don't even think they thought of going to university. But the perception around making TVETs a second choice, not the best option, normally happens in peri-urban areas and so forth. I could be wrong.
No, you're definitely correct. Yes.
But I just want to understand, why are we not finding these TVETs in rural areas? If really the issue of poverty, the issue of unemployment is prevalent there, the issue of unskilledness is there, why are we not finding institutions such as TVETs in rural areas?
Sure, and that's actually a very difficult question for me to answer, but a necessary one, especially because of the space we operate in. I think those are the hard-hitting questions we need to start asking, right? That in our efforts to transform, create pipelines, how are we creating the pipelines if we are all constantly exporting our talent out of the rural areas and expecting them to then go back and do some fundamental change in those spaces. And I think it's something we can create a discussion on, really. I do not have an answer for. So maybe if you do have some insight, you can enlighten me. But I've actually never understood that scope to that degree of lack of. Because when I was doing my research around the Tvets and their locations, I think the ones that did speak was your Entlanzenis and your Headstrong, which are generally ruralish, but maybe not as rural as your Eastern Capes and your Limpopos. But whilst there is a footprint in some rural areas, we're not doing enough. And I think that's then a challenge for ourselves in the built environment to start that conversation.
Yeah, because we are speaking of people, of course, but the numbers say that unemployment is much more prevalent, actually more prevalent in rural areas compared to your townships, compared to your urban areas, right? And yet, if really the idea is to have everyone participate meaningfully in the economy, it means we must create an environment that would then allow them to do that. But also, you're bringing up another thought, which is, if really we want to halve the migration from rural provinces into Gauteng, why are we not having environments that would allow people to stay where they are and assist in building their communities, as you spoke to the IDP issue? Why are we not speaking about having even technical schools? It doesn't even have to be, in particular, a vocational training institution. It can be a vocational school where technical skills are taught. That for me speaks to quality education. That to me speaks to the sustainable development of all, which is one of the 16 goals that have been put forth. But when are we going to start speaking about locating necessary institutions in much needed areas?
Yeah. And
look, we can make an argument that in a rural area there's 600 people and you can't build one college for 600. But what we know for a fact is rural areas are normally they could be like five rural areas, right? And those 5 rural areas, there's a central point in which they can meet, where it's actually cheaper to travel to versus going to town, which I think on average today, going to any town from any rural area is about, it ranges between 50 and 30 rands, which is quite expensive. So even if you're getting NSFAS, you wouldn't be able to access those because it becomes quite an expensive exercise. Now, adding on to the commercialization of education, because when you commercialize education, you don't commercialize it only by paying to go into sessions or lessons. You also, the issue of paying for transport and the burden of having to get lunch when we are living in a very unequal society and people are very poor. We are very poor. I'm poor for sure. So
you don't look poor.
They say don't look like the problems. But how we go about it personally, I have a challenge, and I think this channel in particular is here to challenge these type of setups, to say that when are we moving into rural areas? When are we moving into, because I actually didn't want this to be even an interview. I wanted it to be a space where we share ideas, to say that, look, the spatial arrangement of TVET is great, but is it really great? Who are we leaving out? If the idea is that we don't leave anyone behind, but in actual fact, we've left dozens of people behind, right? And what programs are there for young people in rural areas? There's gender-based violence. There's great numbers of alcoholism, and that's because they say a free mind, the devil, an
idle mind,
it's the devil's playground. And that is to say that because people are actually bored, they end up entertaining themselves.
Sure.
They get alternatives. And when are we going to create positive alternatives for our people? If TVETs are great. They're supposed to produce backbones of our
society.
economy and our society. They produce leaders. I mean, we've got a deputy minister who's from a TVET and who's actually in the Department of Higher Education. So that actually shows that besides it being a second choice in many instances, are you putting it in a place where people can actually say that is a choice I'm making, a first choice
definitely.
I'm making to go to? Understand? Because I think the whole conversation, when it was in my head, and I think the first time we had this conversation, we were in Soweto, and we drove around and we saw that something is awfully off, because there's developments taking place, yet the kids who are going into these schools, it's not factual anyway, but seems so, since there's high unemployment. Still, we're not finding that representation of those kids. You know, the average bricklayer age, the average age is 50 years.
Sure.
Average of a bricklayer.
Shocking.
Average age of bricklayers
in
South Africa is 50 years old. And average, gender, obviously, it's
male.
It's male, and then race is black. But I'm just saying, do you see the problems are quite a lot, and they are multi-layered, but to a very great extent, I think there are simple ideas that can resolve the challenges that we are faced with in terms of unemployment, and also making TVET an institution of choice. But yeah, I think you can take it from there.
And I think maybe just to ride on your thought as well, it's definitely that attractiveness, because how are we sitting with such a high unemployment rate and our average age of a bricklayer is 50, when in fact a bricklayer gets paid weekly? Like, what do young people actually want? And I think that's another question we need to ask, that are these young people that we're trying to empower and we are fighting for, in fact fighting for themselves? If we are saying the stats are this, and there's a definite disconnect in terms of unemployment, when are young people opening themselves up to an opportunity that arises? Bricklaying may not be your first choice, right? I don't think it would be mine. But if there is a shortage, and I think in our first conversation we even spoke about communities that have projects, and there's that 30% that must stay in communities. How are young people participating in those spaces when we're speaking high unemployment? But also when you speak to the built environment and the challenge and the purpose of this channel, in terms of advocating for development of TVETs in spaces where we feel unemployment is high and in fact kids have too much time on their hands, I think that's a challenge that should come out of this conversation, in fact, to the built environment. Where are our friends in corporate? Where are our friends in government, decision makers, people in the built environment who can make sure that we at least have two big TVET institutions built in communities that really need it? I mean, if you look at Eastern Cape and its high teenage pregnancy rate, they were in the news in the past few months on just 12-year-olds who have kids. Those are shocking statistics. And whilst those people are young now, they're not going to be young forever. So what are we doing to ensure that these people are absorbed in whatever form of economic activity? And I think there's definitely then still that attraction issue on how are we making even just the skilled labor look attractive enough for a young person who's sitting at home and doing nothing to say, okay, let me try it out. It may not be my first option, but let me be doing something, because no money is worse than some money.
I think when you say that, someone once said, it was a joke. I hope you're going to laugh about it. Don't hold it against me. Someone said, who's drafting my 2000? Meaning, who's hiring my 2000? And I'm like, you ever don't know who
guys. And you know, Shame, sorry to jump in there. Very difficult people to work with.
Is it?
In the skilling space. Sure. And you know, it's probably also a generational thing, right? Because our parents and their parents were in the same era of apartheid. So the conversations were somewhat understandable. And our parents and us were just in apartheid and out, right? But just out. So the country was not fully free yet. So our conversations still somewhat speak to exclusion, it speaks to colonialism, it speaks to trying to decolonize education, try to make education free and the works. But young people now are like, why are we still having these conversations? Why has the work not been done yet? And when I say they are a difficult breed, I don't say it because I do not want to be like them, because I think their courage and just their assertiveness and conviction inspires me. But there is also just a lack of understanding of how issues come about and how they should be involved in ensuring that discussions come to the fore and that they are part of those discussions. So there's an us and them culture with the 2Ks. It's things are in shambles and it's not because of us. So there's that exclusion culture in how they do things. And I don't think that's the way we should be going about it.
But is it, okay, maybe there's a conversation we're going to have offline because of time. But I also want to note that I hate the idea of actually characterizing AMA 2000 as the same people.
Sure.
I think it's an unfair position to actually put them on. And of course, their courage, their conviction, and confidence to do what they like is exactly what we wished to have had.
True.
You know,
no, definitely.
And it's inspiring to say that, look, we're still struggling to find our little voice, and they've definitely done so well in finding that particular voice. But I also don't want to accept that there are young people who are not doing their best to come out of the situations that they find themselves in. I think that's an unfair thing to even think of, because like I said, if we put ourselves in the position of a young person in a rural area who goes to a school with kids, I think my sister's a teacher, and she once said that kids in rural areas deserve teachers with great patience. And I'm not saying teachers in rural areas are not doing well enough.
Sure.
I'm saying they need support.
Definitely.
Right? You're dealing with a child who hasn't eaten. Even in townships, you're dealing with a child who hasn't eaten. You're dealing with a child who's most probably abused.
True.
You're dealing with a child who doesn't have parents, who doesn't have money, who's dealing with a lot for a person who's at that particular age. And you've got little to almost zero support to actually assist that particular child. And it's not just one child. It's 70 in the
70,
class.
yeah.
That you have to, and I know in township you sometimes hear that we are 120 in a class.
Sure. Oh no, yeah.
So it's quite a lot for me to imagine, or to even say that children or teens these days, or people who've dropped out, are not trying hard enough. I think people are trying to survive, and until education is shown as is treated as a survival tool, which it is, then we're gonna get somewhere.
Sure.
But we also need to push our government, the private sector to support the call for quality education. And we must define it to be, when we say quality, we must be able to say
what does it mean? Yeah.
Education must be equitable and it must be accessible to every child across South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great conversation. It's been great having you here.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot of insight. I don't know if you want to share a few words with us before.
Sure. And I think maybe one was overwhelmed with just the setting and the cameras, but I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think once we get into the mindset that the issues that exist, we need to be part of the solution. And I know we constantly make quotes of Mahatma Gandhi saying, you are the change you want to see, or you have to be the change you want to see. But I think we need to rally really around the issues of society and what more can we do. And this extractive culture of corporates and big business needs to come to an end at some point. And we need to ensure that impact becomes the word of the day. Impact becomes the intention. Impact becomes the deliberate effort in everything we do. Because really, if we don't get our house in order, we won't be having a country to run in a few years' time. So I think let's rally all our forces and let's really participate in the active citizenship of the issues that prevail.
Oh, thank you so much, Ms. Ntlokwana. I think Madam here has made a clear call, and it is to aggressively, and I mean aggressively, to go on and talk to the issues of quality education, locating TVETs where they are meant to be located.
Indeed.
Making them accessible to the people who actually need them.
Yeah.
We are at risk of losing a lot as a country if we leave anyone behind.
True.
And so from us this side, it's been great. It's been lovely. And we hope to see you next time. We love you guys. This is Construction Bay, clocking out.